Okay, well, Mr. Bodette is getting the PowerPoint ready to go. We're here to talk about budget. So this is the last day where we're having discussions with the Finance Committee, and we're looking for recommendations on all the things that we brought to you over the last several weeks. One of the things that is the last thing for you to consider today, along with requests from outside organizations, is what we call staff recommended adjustments. And this is very typical where we file a budget in April. We have some changes based on new information, technical adjustments, and we're going to present those to you now. And then we'll move on to the other items, requests from outside organizations, and then looking for direction and recommendations from you all on all the things we have presented thus far. And we'll show you them all, and we'll go through one by one to kind of walk you through that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bodette.
Okay, Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. So Mr. Samario framed that perfectly. So I have some recommended adjustments to present to you today. Again, these have taken place since we first filed the budget back on April 23rd. I'm just going to start them, get into them. So the first adjustment was included in your staff report, and this is the only general fund adjustment. However, this was an addition for a position to the police department that we're still internally discussing on what exactly we want to do with this position. So I'm going to actually ask that while I'm giving a heads up that we might remove this position, we're still discussing it, and I'm going to ask that you don't make a recommendation on this particular one today. If we do decide to move forward, we would definitely bring this back to you for consideration. So the next two are actually two projects, citywide projects in our information technology, one being the website content management system in 2021. Half of the funding for this has already been secured in the recommended budget in the general fund. This is the other half that's being allocated out to the special and enterprise funds. We just didn't make this into the budget as far as how we would appropriate it. So this is exactly how it would be appropriated to the specific funds. But this is the remaining half. So this is the 2021 portion I'm showing here for the website content. And the other project would be the constituent relationship management project. And this would be for FY20 for this one. Moving on, we have the airport department. So they're adding 2 positions, and they included this in their presentation to full council and kind of gave you a background as to how they came to the decision to include these positions. And then the community development has, they're just adjusting some the grant allocations in their CDBG and home programs. They just get new information and adjust the revenue and appropriations accordingly. The finance department. So the solid waste fund has an inclusion. Have a little asterisk next to this because this isn't included in the staff report, but we will asking that you make a recommendation. But they are adding $20,000 to the homeless camp abatement, and specifically this is related to work in the parks. Library has some adjustments in their county library fund. Not the general fund central library, but the county library. So the Montecito library is adding some hourly salaries allocations just for coverage purposes, as well as the Carpinteria library is getting some extra revenue. I believe it was Measure X that the city is contributing a little bit extra, and the Friends of the library are decreasing their contribution. So the net is what's being shown there. So that's some extra revenue there. And last, the Public Works Department has a couple. The Fleet Management Fund has a compressor generator appropriation that they're adding for 2 of those. That's just due to emission mandates that they need them. And the Measure A Fund is decreasing their work order revenue. They actually no longer have engineers that are billable positions in that fund. They've been moved to different funds, so we're removing the billable revenue portion out of that fund. And that concludes it for special enterprise.
Any questions? So my only question is regarding the website content management project. You said that's just for fiscal year 2021. That's because that's when that starts?
That's correct.
There's no component next year.
So,
and then
Yeah, exactly. That one would start in 21. This one, the opposite one would start in 20.
The CRM starts in 2020, the
Yes,
constituent.
Correct.
And the 157, that's for both of the budget years? Or is that per year?
That is just the single year for 20.
And so what happens in 2021? It's only a 1 year, one-time startup?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And is this a separate item from the outside? Do you want to do public comment and a vote on this one first, or?
I don't think we need to do that.
Okay.
We'll move on to the next slide.
Okay.
So these are the requests from outside organizations. You've heard from most of them. The one that you did not get a chance to hear from last week was the Santa Barbara Culinary Experience. So I would suggest letting them speak. And then we had one request that you all got a copy of from Ms. Kathy King. She is representing Earth Day, and she had a request for additional funding. And so you might want to give her some time as well. And then once they're done, then we'll have some of our own comments, and then we'll move on to looking for recommendations.
Okay, great. Come on up to the mic.
Good to see you again. Hello, Chairman Dominguez and Councilmember Harmon and Friedman. My name's Eric Spivey. I'm Chairman of the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and the Culinary Arts and the organizer of the Santa Barbara Culinary Experience. The Santa Barbara Culinary Experience, it will shine a bright light on why Julia Child chose to live on the American Riviera, and is at one of only 2 events in the world that will be endorsed by the Julia Child Foundation. Bottom line, our goal is to, in each year in March, increase hotel occupancy, increase restaurant bookings, beverage and artisan sales, and increase activity in a broad range across public and private spaces throughout the city, but also to increase domestic and international awareness of Santa Barbara as a world-class culinary destination. I sent you some emails this morning. I'm not sure if you had a chance to review, but that gives a much greater comprehensive details on that. My intention is only to speak about 3 minutes, as I'd like to have you have a number of amount of time to question for me. Our request is that the City Council be a founding sponsor of the Santa Barbara Culinary Experience for $50,000. Let me share 2 milestones with you. First, August 15th, 2019, which is less than 90 days away, and it was Julia's birthday. August 15th, 2019 would be our 107th birthday. We're having an event at the Montecito Club, and we are going to be bringing media across America, both in California but across America, to come spend 2 days in Santa Barbara to review all the culinary attributes that Santa Barbara has in a way to hopefully have them understand the riches of Santa Barbara, but also to be able to announce the March 2020 event. The second big milestone is a March 13th through 15th, 2020 event called the Santa Barbara Culinary Experience. It's going to be including all the restaurants, hotels. We've been meeting with the Hospitality Board. We've met with Visit Santa Barbara. We've visited with the mayor. And we have a advisory committee and an honorary committee that is committed to making this a very big event that will have a huge impact on the economics of the Santa Barbara region. The event in March of 13th through 15th, we will also be providing a number of signature events, including a welcome reception, dinners, local artisan market, key panels held throughout the city. We will be having each of the restaurants and hotels have programming about Julia and Julia-themed events. And our intention is that in our second year, we will go from thousands of people attending, several thousand, to 5,000 to 10,000 people attending. About 70% of the people will be from the outside of Santa Barbara, but we'll also be doing programming to help and engage local community at a very varying range of price points. So I'd love to answer any questions you have. In summary, we hope the council will be supportive of being the only city other than Washington, D.C. to have a major event that includes the involvement and endorsement of the Julia Child Foundation.
Questions? You mentioned the Montecito Club. Has
Yes.
the county funded this project?
No,
Okay.
no. No one has funded this project yet. The Julia Child Foundation has funded this project. So our intention is we're going to be spending over $535,000 in the next 12 months producing this event. And so the $50,000 that we're asking from the City Council is less than 10% of the amount that we're going to be spending on creating an event that can, over time, make a big, huge, sustainable annual event that helps and brings all members of the Santa Barbara community up together.
Okay. Have you gone through the events committee funding
We have.
process?
We've approached them. We filed. Their limit is $20,000, and our belief is that we really would do much better and we'd accelerate our success in year one if we got $50,000.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Kathy King from Community Environmental Council, representing Earth Day. I think I've heard of that.
Good afternoon, Chair Dominguez and members of the committee. Thank you so much for fitting us in today. This has long been on our wish list, and we just didn't know how to navigate this process. So I really appreciate all your help with getting us here. We're very grateful that the city currently supports the Earth Day Festival at a $10,000 sponsorship level, and we are also well aware that this is much lower than the other major festivals in town, and we do consider ourselves to be on a par with those other festivals. We have large groups from places like GM and Toyota that are sponsors that bring in large groups to work the festival, and they also come from out of town, and so they stay here. So we don't know what the TOT numbers are, but we do know that we have that there is some benefit to the city in that. We also have been watching the city's fees that we pay go up on an annual basis, and currently what we are paying out to the city in terms of fees, police presence, site rentals, the city's booth that we put together as part of the sponsorship exceed the $10,000 sponsorship by almost $15,000. So I know that the request is listed as $50,000, but really we would be happy to cover costs. This isn't a fundraiser for CEC. This is our gift to the community. We structure it as community outreach, and we are really just looking to recoup costs. And we assume all the risk, and we have set up 3 revenue streams that generally help us do that: sponsorship, registration fees, and concessions. And a year like this made us realize that concessions can be tricky when the weather is what it was for most of the month of April. So we definitely didn't achieve as high of a level as we have in the past and as we had hoped for this year, mostly due to the weather, because, we don't go in fully covered until we cover all our costs with the concession side of it. We are also a very eco-friendly event, not only in what we outreach to the community in terms of the education, but in terms of the infrastructure that we set up. I believe we're the only major event that has a company hand sort all the waste. So there is a landfill diversion benefit to it, and also just an educational opportunity to show the community that we are taking care of all of the waste in a responsible way. Next year's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day itself. It was a concept that came out of the 1969 oil spill, as was CEC, so we will also be celebrating 50 years next year. So there's no better time for the city to have a stronger and more beneficial presence than next year. So I think this is great timing. I think that we always see a decent amount of press outside the region, but I think with the 50th anniversary, we will amplify that next year, and we would love to see the city as a more major partner. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And is this something you see as an ongoing request, or is this a one-time thing because of the 50th anniversary? 50 for 50?
Well, at the 50 level, certainly, but we would definitely like to be able to cover the costs that we put out to the city on an annual basis.
And I'm guessing because you just submitted, you didn't go to the event committee either to seek funding?
No, we've been a line item in a strange portion of the budget for a few years, and so I think we were just trying to go on the same trajectory that we were on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions? Okay, Maggie Moss Tucker, and then Robin Yolander after Ms. Moss Tucker.
Good afternoon. I'm Maggie Moss Tucker, and I am just here along with a few committee members of the group that has proposed not a Van Gogh exhibit marketing, but a 3-month celebration, multi-generational, citywide. So I just want to clarify that. 3 months, multi-generational, citywide. But I also decided to just do a quick sidebar in the letter that you received, and we hope you got the second one as well from Helene Schneider. My husband was the one who curated the Monet exhibition in Boston. That year, he was given the most prestigious, highest award by the Bureau of Tourism because it did more economic impact than the Red Sox that year. So I share that with you because we believe that this will have an enormous impact economically, and I'm talking to the Finance Committee, for the city. So we hope you'll support it, but we are here to say if you have any questions.
What are the Red Sox? Any other questions? Okay. Robin? One more speaker and then.
Finance Committee and City staff, thank you so much for considering the Cool Block proposal today. I wanted to point out that the Cool Block at its heart is a community engagement strategy that can support and enhance many of the city's existing programs as well as the greater goals of the city, and can also grow and change over time. For example, it can serve as a conduit to our citizens and our residents to build and support and work alongside the fire department and our CERT teams. It can build our diverse city leaders for city commissions, committees, and support the neighborhood outreaches work. It can also support with community policing goals, disaster resiliency, and the overarching environmental strategies that the city is working on. The program is fully customizable based on the needs of the city and its departments and the goals of the staff involved. Thank you again for considering the proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
So with that, I'll close public comment.
Okay, so
And-
just a few comments from staff. Not going to speak to the merits of generally to the merits of the request. I'm sure they're all great. Just some context. You're familiar with where we're at from a balancing perspective and all that. So all of these are represent additional monies that we'd have to find. But I will make a few comments on each of them. Downtown Santa Barbara's request for an economic development outreach director, $50,000. You know, we have a Cosmon study that's coming up in the next month or two. Not sure what they're going to recommend, but they may recommend that the city have its own economic development manager position. So maybe the timing of this request is a little premature. Might want to wait till that study comes back with its recommendations before the city acts on this. The Van Gogh the Van Gogh 3-month event. It is additional monies. What Ms. Snyder recommended was that it go through, at least have some oversight from the Arts Advisory Committee. She was not suggesting that would go through a competitive process, which is how all those sort of monies are allocated through a competitive process, but just that they'd have some oversight so there's more accountability to that. But it is extra money. I'm not even sure that they would qualify into those pots of money because there's no nonprofit organization, nor is it, in the first year at least, there's no event. It's just marketing. And then I'm going to have Mr. Matt Forr speak to the Cool Block program. He's been working with us more closely than anybody here, and I think he has some comments. And by the way, this is a 3-year or 4-year request. That's well beyond the 150 that's shown here.
Good afternoon, Finance Committee. Matt Forr, Senior Assistant City Administrator. We've been speaking with the Cool Blocks folks for about a year. We've done quite a bit of due diligence, speaking to other cities. Palo Alto was one of the ones that we spoke to quite a bit, primarily for two reasons. One is because Cool Blocks began and sort of had its genesis in the Bay Area, but also Chief Eric Nickel, our new fire chief, came from Palo Alto. So to the extent that this has a nexus to resiliency and those sorts of things, we wanted to understand them. The Cool Blocks program, from my understanding and from what I've learned, has 3 primary components to it. The first is sustainability. And the way staff looked at it was, to what extent does the city have existing programs or initiative in place? And this all has to do with, finite funds and bandwidth of staff. We're a pretty lean organization, as you're aware. So from a sustainability standpoint, staff's perspective is that the direction you've already given us in relation to the strategic energy plan, for example, this big work plan that we're putting together to get to 100% renewable electricity by 2030 is big lift. It's a big lift financially. It's a big lift with staff time. So I'll leave it to you to weigh where you want to put that funding. But certainly the strategic energy plan is going to have a financial component to it. And we're going to have to put, some fairly substantial dollars toward implementing your council goal. The second is resiliency. Now, there is a piece of resiliency. In speaking to Chief Nickel, he said, no, we're all for resiliency, especially here on the South Coast. Our preference and the primary vehicle by which we accomplish that is through these community emergency response teams. This CERT program, it's run out of the city OES department. It's bilingual. We have the CERT program as well as LISTOS, which you've seen of late, certainly through the Thomas Fire. And the chief's concern was either duplicative messaging or counter messaging, or at least dilution of effort, right? So his preference is certainly, let's put the focus in on the CERT programs and keep it there and keep building that robust program as the primary vehicle. The third item is really connected neighbors, connected neighborliness. This is one of the areas that came up in our due diligence calls with Palo Alto, with Los Angeles, and with San Francisco. The premise that connected neighbors, those that are connected that know each other, do yield more livable, safer, more enjoyable communities. That seemed to bear out across the board. So I'd kind of leave it to you as to what you're looking for. If it's environmental, I don't think staff really supports it. If it's resiliency, the fire chief would rather have it in the CERT program. If it's connectedness, there may be an ability to tailor a program to that. As you're aware, with any new initiative or with any new employee, the first year is really tailoring curriculum. You put a lot into it. And so we probably won't see the real big outcomes until the out years. And I think that's the reason for the multi-year $320-something thousand request in total. But I can answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. That was enlightening. I think one of the comments earlier by Ms. King about waste diversion. So it was successful Earth Day doing waste diversion for that one group, but what about the other 360 days a year? I think this is something that might allow our communities to really dig in deep because like you said, our goals are lofty for sustainability for the city. We're going to need a humanities component to go along with the science and economics. So I think it's worth considering. Any other questions for Mr. Four? Thank you very much.
And then I'm going to have Ms. Laura Doubles come up and speak to the request from the Housing Trust Fund of Santa Barbara County.
Good afternoon, Chair Dominguez and committee members. I'm Laura Doubles. I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager. I'm here to talk to you today about the Housing Trust Fund request. Staff believes that this is a really good program. It has a very good concept of helping first-time home buyers, and we very much support that. Our understanding for the funding that we had the first time around, which was 2 years ago, was that it was a one-time request. Apparently that has not been the case, as that they've come forward again. But they do have some reasonings behind that created the issue for them requesting a second time. The other thing that staff just wants to make you all aware of is that we have just found that there is no guarantee that the loans will be for homes here in the city of Santa Barbara. So they are financing homes within a South Coast region. We are a part of that, and it definitely does help our workforce, especially giving employees an opportunity to buy. It may just not be here in the city of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
And then the last item, or not the last, the next item is the Santa Barbara Culinary Experience. You've heard that. I have no real comment about that. It's just additional money we would need to come up with. And then the Earth Day Festival, $50,000. As Ms. King mentioned, in the city administrator's budget, there's currently $10,000 that is a line item. They don't have to request it every year. It's an ongoing automatic unless there's a change to that. So they have the same status, not magnitude-wise, but same status as Old Spanish Days, Semana Nautica, and so forth. So that's really it in terms of our comments. we can look to you now for your deliberation, recommendations on each of these items, which ones you'd like to recommend to council or not. You can do them individually or as a group.
So I'm open to suggestions how to proceed. I think my default value would just be go one to five, and maybe just do a vote up or down, and then at the end wrap it up in a motion if everyone's comfortable with the results. And if anyone wants to discuss, I think in general, these are all great programs, and I think for ones that we don't fund, we're going to push to get them to sources that might be able to provide funding, whether it's a different city budget, the event committee, housing, or the arts fund. But I think that's one way to proceed. Okay, so we'll just start with Downtown Santa Barbara's request for a director. Do you want to comment or just vote?
Can just vote.
Okay. Do you want to start?
I'll start. No.
No.
No. Okay, Museum of Art Van Gogh?
No.
On this one, I'm actually, I just want to make a preference on this. I don't want this process to be an end around. This happened at the county. On this one, I've gone back and forth on it. It's only for the 20,000 for the first year, and my reasoning for supporting it, it's an extraordinary circumstance in that this part of town, the businesses have been really affected, in particular by the construction at the museum and then Library Plaza. And this is a one-time event, international in significance, that will tie into not only the museum's reopening, but if we can get everything lined up, it would also be the unveiling of our own city infrastructure at the Library Plaza. So there is a city component of it. And again, those businesses have been really impacted over the last few years. And so this proposal is not conducive to going through the normal process because there's not a nonprofit, so there really isn't another way to do it. So this is an exception that I would be willing to make, so I'll be voting yes.
And yes. Cool Block Program?
No.
No.
Yes. Housing Trust Fund of Santa Barbara County?
No.
I'd like to do it for just 1 year to see if there are any residents in Santa Barbara that are there, but not the second year.
No. Culinary Experience?
No.
No.
No. Earth Day Festival?
No.
No.
No. Okay, so by my math, just the Van Gogh passed with 2 out of 3. Did I calculate that correctly? Okay.
If I could just make a quick comment. I did not support any of these, except I support all of them deeply. Really and truly, I do. I just, for me, I'm very sensitive to process issues. And so I felt that fairness dictated for me that I had to make these votes. But I'm very, very excited to see all of your programs, and I think it portends well for our community. So,
and just to be clear, this is not a final decision. It will be presenting all this to council, and then we'll look for 4 votes either way on each of these items at that point on June 5th.
I just also wanted to say to all the groups, I appreciate the great work you're doing. And like I had mentioned, and I think Councilmember Hartman talked about it, this is not a normal process. And then my experience at the county saw that it became a normal process, and there wasn't a way to make it a level playing field. And the 2 that I supported were exceptional cases, and but I want to find a way to see if there's a path for those that didn't get funded to come through our standard process, which Chair Dominguez mentioned earlier. So thank you all for your submittals.
And I agree. The one that made it through, it was a relatively low amount, and there wasn't a channel set up for it. This is a extraordinary process. This is not an ordinary process, and unless we want to change that up, which I don't think there's any appetite given our budget issues to do that, the normal channels are through the community development grant process, the event committee, and those are the ways I would refer people to look for their funding if they want to go to those processes.
And this last slide, if you can do kind of as a group, these are the things that we presented to you over the last several weeks. I will mention that on the third bullet, staff recommended adjustments. If we can just pull out the one item, the very first item, the $114,000 for the police, we're going to hold that in abeyance for, and we'll bring that back with more information on June 5th. But the rest of them, we're looking for recommendations from the Finance Committee.
I'll move the amended staff recommendation.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Great. Thank you. I think
So
that
we
wraps it up.
will be back on
June
June
5th.
5th.
Yep. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.